So hello everyone, in this video we'll be starting a new chapter in JavaScript which is loops. So let's understand what are loops. So what is a loop? Loops are used to execute the same block of code again and again as long as a certain condition is met. The basic idea behind a loop is to automate the repetitive task within a program to save the time and effort. So for example, if you want to execute a same block multiple times, so you can use loops for that, and that loop will constantly execute the same block of code until a particular condition is satisfied. We have different types of loop. The first one is the while loop. Loops through a block of code as long as the condition specified evaluates it true. Do while loop through a block of code once, then the condition is evaluated. So it will at least execute the code once, whether the condition is true or false, it doesn't matter. But do while loop at least one time execute the block, and then after that it checks the condition, and in the next time if it is true, then it will execute next time, otherwise it will not execute the code. We'll understand that in the detailed manner, don't worry. If the condition is true, the statement is repeated as long as the specified condition is true. Then we also have a for loop. This loops through a block of code until the counter reaches a specified number. So it is kind of similar to while loop as well, but it is a different approach to loop. In this, we actually create variables and initialize that in the same block of code or in the same loop. We also have for in loop. This is a loop when you want to execute the properties or return the properties of an object. We also have for off loop. This is used for iterable objects such as arrays or strings. So if the object or if the data type is iterable, if we can iterate over that object or that data type, then we'll be using this for off to get all the elements. We'll be seeing all of them in detailed manner, so don't worry about it. The first loop is the while loop. This is the simplest looping statement provided by JavaScript. The while loop loops through a block of code as long as the specified condition is evaluates to true. As soon as the condition fails, the loop is stopped. The generic syntax of the while loop is this one. You can see we have this while block or this while keyword in the bracket, just like if we use this condition, and in after that we add this block, and whatever you want to execute, so it will be presented inside this block. So it will repeat that same block of code until this condition is false. So if this condition false, then it will not execute the code and it will stop the loop. So this is basically the idea. Now you can see we have this variable I, which is equal to 1 now, and we're using this while loop in which we are checking if the value of I is less than or equal to 5. So you have to print or document or write that in this statement. So you have to write this paragraph, and then the value is presented or printed actually. Then in the same iteration, we are actually incrementing the previous value of the I. So now I is 1. Oh, the I is 2 now because it was 1. Now it becomes 2. Next time it will again check the value of I. It will uncheck the value until the value is less than or equal to 5. So it will again check the value of I. Now the value of I is 2 because we incremented that. Now 2 will be checked here, and 2 is still less than or equal to 5. So it will execute this code again, and then it will increment that to 3. Then it will check that 3 again. Then it is true. Then it will again print the statement and it will increment that to 4. Then again it checks that 5, and now 5 is less than or equal to true, and then it will print this one, and then it will increment that to 6. Now if we check this value of 6 less than equal to 5, which is false, so it will not go inside this block, it will stop the loop. So this loop will run 5 times because the value from 1 to 5 will be executed as true, and then after 6 it will not execute the code because that condition will be false. We also have the do while loop. The do while loop is a variant of the while loop which evaluates the condition at the end of each loop iteration. With a do while loop, the block of code executed once and then the condition is evaluated. If the condition is true, the statement is repeated as long as the specified condition evaluates to true. The generic syntax, you can see that. So the do while loop is kind of similar to the while loop, but it has a difference that do while loop at least first it actually prints the statement and then after that it checks the condition. So first it will execute the block of code and then it will check whether the condition is meeting or not. In the next time it will not execute if the condition is false. So in this case the do while loop at least execute the iteration or execute this block of code at least once, because if the condition is false the next time it will not do that. So that's the case. If you want to execute the block of code at least once, whether the condition is true or false doesn't matter, then it will you will use do while loop, and next time it will check if the condition is true, so it will repeat the block, otherwise it will stop the execution or stop the iteration. Now you can see in here the same thing we did with this, just like we were doing the while loop. So do in this do block we are actually writing this or the same block we were earlier doing, and then the condition is checked. So in this way we can actually execute the same thing here. Now you can see the difference between the while and do while loop. The while loop differs from the do while loop in one important way. With a while loop, the condition to be evaluated is tested at the beginning of each loop iteration. So in the while loop, we check the condition at the start. So if the conditional expression evaluates to false, the loop will never be executed. If the condition is false, then it will not execute the block at least once also. So it will not execute the code. With a do while loop, on the other hand, the loop will always be executed once. So first it will execute the code, then after it will check the conditional expression whether it is true or false. So if it is true, so it will repeat the while loop or do while loop next time as well. And if it is false, so it will not execute next time. So it will only execute it for one if it is false or if the condition is false. The condition is evaluated at the end of the loop iteration rather than the beginning. So we check it at the end. You can see that the condition is checked at the end. Then comes the for loop. The for loop repeats a block of code as long as a certain condition is met. It is typically used to execute a block of code for a certain number of times. Its syntax is this. So you can execute this like while loop by initializing the number, checking the condition in the same way. So earlier we were creating the variable outside of the while loop and then we were incrementing that in the block of code or in the block of loop. But now we have this new syntax which is initialization, condition and increment. In this initialization, we create a variable that will be used in the for loop. Then we check the condition or specify the condition that what should be the condition for that variable to be executed. Then we also have the increment or decrement value here. So we increment the variable or decrement that. You can see all the steps are explained to you. I already explained you, so don't worry. Now you can see the same thing we did with this for loop, the earlier one. So we created a I variable and initialized it with 1. So the initial value of this I variable will be 1. And now I is less than equal to 5. This is the condition that will be checked by this for loop. And then we are incrementing the I value after each iteration. Now it will repeat this code until this condition is true. So this one is incremented every time. So the I variable will be incremented after printing this line of code. And if the value becomes greater than 5, then it will not check that. So greater than or equal to 5, then it will not check this code, or it will not repeat this block of code. So this is basically the easiest, like the smallest approach to use the while loop or the loop. So we use this one majorly. So you can consider it. Everything is happening inside this block. So this code was initialization, and this was for condition checking, and this was for incrementing. So the steps we were doing earlier separately, we are doing that in a small in this parentheses only. And then comes our block that we want to execute. We can also iterate array items or array items here, just like by using this for loop. You can see we have initialized I as a 0, and we are iterating until the length is specified, or until I is less than the array length we have, and we are incrementing the value of I. Why I started it with 0? Because we know that we want to access the values inside the arrays, and the value we can access by their index. So, and the index starts from the 0. That's why we initialized it with 0. Now you can see we are accessing the fruits square bracket I. So in the first iteration, this value of I will be 0. So it will get you the first item, fruits 0 index. So this one will be at the first iteration. In this next time, it will give you banana because it is the one index, because it will increment after each iteration. It will increment the value of I. So that's why you can get all the indexes, and those indexes will always be less than fruits dot length. If it becomes greater than the fruits dot length or equal to the length of this array, then it will not execute this code, or this block will be stopped execution. So this way you can actually uh, iterate over the elements of an array. This is the easiest solution you can use. We also have the for in loop, which is a special type of loop that iterates over the properties of an object. We can iterate over an object as well, or the elements of an array. The generic syntax of the for in loop is this one. So we specify the variable name, and then we specify in keyword, and then we specify the object or array, and then the code execution. So earlier we were using this I variable and we were checking the condition. We don't have to do this. We just specify this variable name that we want to use, and then we specify in object and in keyword, and then we specify array or object. The loop counter, it implies variable in the for in loop is a string, not a number. So it is a string now, so the value will be given to you. It contains the name of the current property or the index of the current array element. So if you're using array, so it will be actually the index, this variable. And if you're using it on an object, so that will be a property of that object, or every object, like for that object, every property will be given to you one by one. Now you can see we have this person object, in which we have this name Clark, surname Kent, age 36. If we use this prop variable in here, in and then by specifying the person object, now we can use this prop as a property name for each property, or for each iteration. So in the first iteration, the first property will be given to you, which is name. So name, and we can access that with person square bracket name. So we are accessing the value actually. So with the help of this name, we are actually getting the value of this name property. So name property has the Clark value. So here name will be written when we see the output, and here the value will be given to that property. So this way you can execute every property in here, and you can get the value of that property as well by using this person object we have. Similarly, we can do this for an array as well. You can see it is very easy. We just specified the variable I in fruits. So fruits is the array, and this I will be the index each time we'll be getting. So it is a shorter approach to arrays and objects. Instead of using for loops or normal for loops, we use for in loop for iterable objects. Now you can see we are using the index I on the fruits array, and then each time it will give you the index from 0 to the end of the index. Similarly, we also have for off loop, which is an ES6 way to iterate over objects or arrays. We can also use this one. The difference is that we use off, and this letter will be the direct element. So earlier it was giving you the index, but now it will give you the element directly. So you can use this. So you can use it on arrays and on strings. So you can see that the items which are iterable. So on that you can use. So this character will be direct character, not the index. So if you use in loop, so that will be an index. If you use off loop, so it will give you the value directly. So now you can see in here, this will be the value printed out. So this is the end of the slide. In the next video, we'll be understanding about the loops practically. So let's meet in the another video. Thank you for watching.